If you had done what I asked, what I suggested, and done questions 32 through 41 on practice test 5, and gone through them and done spent 13 minutes, no more than 13 minutes. Remember, you have 5 passages, 65 questions, and you have, 65 minutes and 52 questions. 65 minutes and 52 questions. Break down the 5 passages is 13 minutes a passage. So no more than 5 minutes reading. I'm going to demonstrate on this one, I think, that the first and last reading method here. So so remember the reading the first paragraph and the first and last sentence of each additional paragraph and getting details that are needed. Remember that you read this part too, the italicized part. I'm going to move my fat head at this point so that it's not distracting people. This passage adapted from John Bonahan. Why you shouldn't trust internet comments. Showing us something like internet comments by the American Association for the Advancement of Science. The wisdom of crowd has become a mantra in the internet age. You need to choose a new vacuum cleaner? Check out the reviews at online merchant Amazon. But a new study suggests that such online scores don't always reveal the best choice. Oh. So you're saying the stars at Amazon are lying, huh? A massive control experiment of web users found that such ratings are highly susceptible to rational herd behavior, and the herd can be manipulated. And to me, that would be the thesis of the main idea, right? In terms of the passage and what's going to be happening. So then I'm going to start with the first and last reading method. Now this isn't always exact, so sometimes you'll first and last sentence of each additional paragraph. Sometimes the crowd is really wiser than you. The classic examples are guessing the weight of a bull, the number of gumballs in a jar. Your guess is probably going to be far from the mark, whereas the average, many people's choices are remarkably close to the true number. So it's what it's saying is, you in the aggregate, in numerics, in the quantitative, it's actually closer. What happens when the goal is to judge something less tangible, so the quality or worth of a product? According to one theory, the wisdom of the crowd still holds, measuring the aggregate of people's opinions versus a stable, reliable value. Crowd theory, people's opinions in the aggregate, right? Skeptics, however, argue that people's opinions are easily swayed by those of others. So to test which hypothesis is true, you would need to manipulate huge numbers of people, exposing them to false information, determining how it affects their opinions. So I'm using the first and last reading method here. A team led by Sinan Aral, a network scientist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology of Cambridge, did exactly that. Experiment exposure to false information. Aral has been secretly working with a popular website that aggregates news stories. The website allows the user to make comments about the stories and vote each other's comments up or down. This time, we want to know how much the crowd influenced the individual, whether it can be controlled from outside. So can the crowd control the outside? So for 5 months, every comment submitted, the user randomly upvote positive or downvote negative, or as a control, no vote at all. Users generated more than 100,000 comments that were viewed more than 10 million times and rated more than 300,000 times by other users. At least when it comes to comments on news sites, the crowd is more herd-like than wise. Here's another point to be made, and I underlined it. However, the same did not hold for true negative manipulation. Comments receiving fake positive vibes were 32% more likely to receive positive vibes. However, the same did not hold true for the negative manipulation. The ratings of comments that got a fake downvote were usually given an upvote the next user next to them. So I might make a note here: negative votes skewed. Our experiment not reveal the psychology behind people's opinions, but an intuitive explanation so that people are more skeptical of negative social influence. They're more willing to go along with positive opinions of people, so they're more willing to go along with those positives. Duncan Watson, network scientist and Microsoft researcher in New York City, agrees with the conclusion. Is it true? But is to this site is true or general? Watt says he points out that the category of news items in the experiment has a strong effect on how people are manipulated. What explains the difference? If we're going to apply these findings in the real world, we'll need to know the answers. I would thought that will companies be able to boost their products by manipulating online ratings or on a massive scale? That is easier said than done, Watt says. If people detect or learn that comments on a website are being manipulated, the herd may spook and leave entirely. So fear of manipulation of positive results can affect the data, and you see at a glance that this has a chart here. Well, this chart, don't worry about this chart just yet. Remember that. Keep in mind as we come back to this. As we come back, there's three different types of questions. One's ask about data directly. One's ask you to interpret data. And one's ask you to combine data with information in the passage. So let's keep that in mind as we go into the questions for this passage. So remember that now you spent about 5 minutes, and I went through a little more detail on verbally explaining it. If you don't completely understand everything, remember you can come back to certain questions. If you're not completely understanding all of the questions, you can come back to certain questions as you go along. So over the course of the passage, the main focus shifts from a discussion of an experiment and its results to what? So this is more I see as a main idea type of question, asking about the main idea, and specifically looking at some sort of purpose or argument here, and what the focus is. So purpose maybe would be my assumption. And again, you don't have to have these exact, but it's helpful to know. So if you're not quite understanding this whole passage right away, maybe skip this question. But the main focus shifts from an explanation of the practical applications of results. No. A consideration of the questions prompted by the results? Possibly, yes. Then analysis of the defects of undermining the results? No. Conversation with the scientists to dispute the results? No. So consideration of questions that prompted these results, like questions that are taking place. And again, from the such ratings, the highly susceptible to rational herd behavior. Sometimes the crowd is really wiser than you. But what happens when the goal is to judge something less tangible? So here is the question, right? And we could see this as being a major question. And I underline this. So this is, we can see this as being a major question. What happens if the goal is to judge something less tangible? So then our best answer here is B. Being a consideration of the questions prompted by the results. The author of the passage suggests that crowds may be more effective at, and this is an inference or generalization type of question. Now, here it is. Oh, we need to figure out that it's tied in to other questions. It's tied into other answers. So let's, it's tied into a detail, right? Command of evidence or detail. Question is tied into it. So, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Let's look at a keyword. Crowds may be more effective. Crowds may be more effective. So let's go where crowds are more effective. Line 9. Is it talking about our highly susceptible rational herd behavior? And the herd can be manipulated. So would that be it? Lines 11 through 14. Your number is sometimes the crowd is really wiser than you. Line 9. A classic example are guessing the weight of the ball and the numbers of the gumballs in the jar. So this is the quantitative. It can be correct. So certainly a possibility. Your number 11 through 14. Would that be it? The number of your guess is probably going to be far from the mark, whereas the average of the number of choice people is remarkably close to the true number. So I want to double check because it could be either or. It could be 9, but I think 11 through 14 is also talking about your number. So let's go over here and let's take a look just to double check myself here, to make sure that I'm correct. And remember, you can do this yourself as you go along. So what number is this here? It is number 32. So in the reading section, number 32. B. Yeah, so it's actually the more specific, not number 34. B, yes. So I had said, well, A, but it would be, I need to, and I stopped myself because I was like, I think I'm a little bit off here. So this is a good example I'm glad I demonstrated this point. So when you think about guessing on the test, think about if or changing an answer like I'm just about to do. If you were to know this, and you obviously don't have the benefit of the answer, but I'm doing that because I'm trying to explain something. If you know that, man, I'm wrong here, then you might consider changing the answer. If you're just not, if you're just like, maybe I'm not sure, but go with your first instinct. But if you know irrefutably that I'm wrong, then go ahead and change the answer. That, I have one of those dull moments that, I screwed up. So that would be an example of ability to change the answer. So this is a little more specific. 17 through 20 talks about. Does it talk about? Does it talk about? Excuse me. Crowds, 17 through 20. Attitude steer the crowd in the direction test. You will need to manipulate huge numbers of people, 17 through 20. The wisdom of the crowd still holds. Measuring the aggregate of people produces a stable, reliable value. But the quality of a product. Skeptics, however, argue that people is swayed. So we know that there's skeptics there. So we know that can't be true. 25 through 28, as it talking about crowd value test, which now it's talking about testing a hypothesis. So we know that can't be right. So it's going to be B, the evidence, and then creating controversy rather than examining an issue in depth. No, reinforcing members' ideas than challenging those ideas? No. Arriving at accurate quantitative answers than producing valid qualitative judgments? Yes, this is true. Arriving at accurate quantitative answers than producing valid qualitative judgments. Ranking others' opinions than developing genuinely original positions. So this is also inference generalization type of question, quantitative answers rather than qualitative judgments. The crowds may be more effective at that, like guessing the gumballs, at accurate quantitative answers rather than producing valid qualitative judgments, because it kind of the rest of the other details in the passage were questioning the qualitative judgments. So that's a generalization, and then we figured out the detail that goes with that is B. So see how those two choices, two questions are tied together. Okay, moving on. So here's another detail author point of view type of question. Which choice best supports skeptics in line 20? So let's look at our view of skeptics in line 20. This is asking you to tie a detail to an argument. So this is a little bit trickier. Skeptics argue that people's opinions are easily swayed by those of others. So nudging a crowd early on may present contrary opinions. So which detail supports that? Lines 55 through 58. Lines 55 through 58. Comments that received fake positive votes from the researchers were 32% likely to receive more positive votes compared with the control the team reports. So that certainly could be one that we could look at. 58 through 60 and 58 through 60. Let's look at that. And those comments were no more likely to be than the control to be downvoted by the next viewer to see them. No. So this looks like the one and comments can be nudged by positive results. And so let's look at 63 through 65 just to make sure that's true. The ratings of comments got a fake downward region negative and an upvote. So that doesn't really prove that. That doesn't really prove the argument of skeptics. 76 through 79, he manipulated, or true in general. He points out that the category of news items had a strong effect on how much people could be manipulated. So let's just double check this one. 35. So I said I'm going with A. 35. Yes. So A is the best response here. It best supports the view of the skeptic that says in line 20 that people's opinions are easily swayed by those of others. So fake positive votes were more likely to receive more positive votes compared with the control. So positive votes are certainly having an impact. Which action best addresses a question Rotz raises about the study? So command of evidence and generalization here. Which action best addresses a question Watts raises about the study? So here's this is a command of evidence. So we know this is some sort of detail, right? But we're going to look for in a generalization here, a question or generalization that Watts raises about the study. So here is our inference type questions: cause effect, or sequence of events, or purpose. It could be a cause effect. It could be a generalization here. So Watts is the key word. Watts is our key word here. We need to go back and find where Watts is. And when we go back and talk about, here he is in line 72, Duncan Watts, the network scientist at Microsoft Research in New York City, agrees with that conclusion. That they're no more willing to go along with positive. They're more willing to go along with positive opinions from other people. So one question is whether the positive herding bias is specific to the site or true in general. He points out that the category of the news items in the experiment had a strong effect on how much people could be manipulated. So one question is whether the positive herding bias is specific to this site. So the question he raises then, based on this, is what action would best address this question? Providing fewer fake positive comments? No. Using multiple websites, because he was worried about whether it was just this site that was causing a problem. So that certainly would be one that could work. Requiring users to register on a website before voting, that probably wouldn't do any address his question. Informing users that voting data are being analyzed. So again, it's asking for a rhetoric, or overall some sort of cause effect here. Actually, I would actually probably say cause effect as opposed to a generalization, because it's asking for, if this, what would address that question? It's asking you to take it to the next level. 3738, a little bit faster. Vocabulary and context. Boost most nearly means what, as it's used in line 85. So we go and look at line 85. Will companies be able to boost their products by manipulating online ratings on a massive scale? So we know based on that boost most likely means not accelerate or promote, probably increase would be our best bet there. And let's look at, make sure that 37 is what they're looking for. 37 would be promote, yes, and I'm incorrect here, and I started questioning myself again. Another example of questioning myself as I was going too fast through that, to think about that. So it would be promote, because if you look at and I took another look at that and said, well, boosting their products, promoting their image, right, would be the best response here. And I questioned myself, and I probably would have, either without showing access to the answer, would have said, well, I was wrong there. I need to change it because I knew I was wrong. Now I'm taking a guess. Scale most nearly means what in line 86? So line 86 is close by here, and scale can mean multiple different things on a massive scale. Something we know, promoting products on a massive scale. So we know it's not nothing to do with weight or wage or interval or scheme, a level, right? A vocabulary and context question. In the figure, now here's where the data question. Which category of news has the artificially voted up mean score of 2.5? 2.5. So we got to read our chart. Artificially voted up. Here's our key for artificially voted up. And we're going to go and look. Here's 2, and here's 2.5. So we know it's politics. And this is just a straight interpreting data from the passage. So we know that the correct answer is B, politics. 40, according to the figure, again, which category of news shows the smallest difference in mean score between the artificially voted up comments and control of comments, okay? This is in control of comments. These are a little bit more difficult. You're asked to interpret the data. So the smallest difference between artificially voted up and control. So let's look at control. These are the control comments. and the artificial mode one, we're looking for the smallest difference. So we're probably going to look for the ones that are squeezed together. So that would be general news, right? You can see where the smallest difference between them. This is the maximum, this is the minimum, and the smallest difference between them would be general news. So that would be the correct answer there, general news. And I want to double check myself again just to make sure that I'm right. And 40 is D, general news. Now that is an interpreting the graph or interpreting the graph or the graph or data question. Now, let's look at data presented in the figure most directly supports which idea in the passage. Now, here's one where you're asked to go back and instead of only look at the data, but look at something of supporting which idea in the passage. So the mean score of artificially downvoted comments is similar to that of the control. No, the pattern observed in the experiment suggests the patterns of suspicious negative social influence. No, it's suspicious of positive influence. The positive bias observed in users of news sites may not apply to human behavior in other contexts. They didn't talk about news sites and human behavior in other contexts at all. So that's not really true either. The type of story being commented on has an impact to the degree to which people are influenced. Okay, now we're someplace because they're talking about different types of stories. So if I would have thought that the business is pretty similar in economics, that they have a stronger effect. For what explains this difference? We're going to apply these findings in the real world. We'll need to know the answers. I would have thought business is pretty similar to economics, yet they find a stronger match. Found that the category of the news item in the experiment had a stronger effect on how the people could be manipulated. So if we look here, this is this. Watts points out that the category had a stronger effect on how people can be manipulated. So there is our support, and this makes sense based on what we read. So the best response here is D. Best response here is D. And again, it's pretty simple. It's based on, you're not picking anything wild. It's based on the types of news stories and then the comments on them, and then the versus control versus artificially upvoted. So, and he talks about how they are supported based on that. That could be a difficult question and one you don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on, but you can notice how you can eliminate ones that are totally not plausible there. So that gets us through a reading section. Again, you wouldn't spend any more than 13 minutes on this particular reading section. And again, if you needed to skip some questions or weren't sure on some or had to take a stab, or if you get them down to between two, you can go ahead and take your best stab at your best guess at the question, even if it ends up being a little bit more difficult. So that kind of models that reading passage. Again, feel free to go through Khan Academy. Feel free to look at different types of reading questions as we go along in the passage in the exercises.